in climate action. My name is Ian. I work with ESCAP, and this event is a collaborative initiative between ESCAP and the Youth Empowerment in Climate Action Platform, YECAP, and UNFCCC Regional Collaboration Center. So over the past 4 days, we have heard a lot of great stories, great examples, and strong voices on youth engagement in climate actions. And this Action Hub is really about taking stock of now and looking forward into the future. So we will introduce you some tools, including a policy guide for policymakers and practitioners to see how do they implement policies to engage youth in climate action. This will be introduced by a video. And we will also invite the young youth climate advocate, Hema Fatih, who is with us today. She only slept a little, but she still made it because she has been working so hard. And we will have an interactive session that will be led by Ding Long and Joshua. Like we really want to hear your voice and bring that voice up to COP and beyond. And finally, we will hear from the UNFCCC Regional Director, Julie, who will give some final remark, feedback, and insight. And so that's it. Let me share the video now.
Climate change is not a fight for power. It's a fight for survival.
Asia and the Pacific is at the forefront of climate impacts. And youth, who have contributed little to causing climate change, disproportionately suffer its impacts. 60% of global young people aged 15 to 24 live in the Asia and the Pacific region. However, they remain largely marginalized in climate action and climate governance processes. The lack of youth engagement represents a significant missed opportunity for achieving climate goals. Young people are positive agents of change. Their valuable potential for accelerating climate action should be nurtured and invested in. For its part, the United Nations is committed to meaningful youth engagement and aims to lead by example. At the opening of the 79th ESCAP Commission session, ESCAP welcomed 2 youth representatives, Kim Allen and Prim Wong, who spoke in front of high-level delegations. Their statement represented the voices of thousands of youth from Asia-Pacific countries who took part in preceding consultations. Among their calls, young people in Asia and the Pacific seek to be involved in the political processes of climate action, such as nationally determined contributions. To do this, support and opportunities must be provided to young people. Meaningful youth engagement activities include education and capacity building, public and political processes, fostering youth-led action such as social entrepreneurship, and other action for climate empowerment elements. As we fight against climate change, bear this question in mind. How can we engage youth, work with youth, and empower youth to address the climate emergency? The future of Asia and the Pacific lies in the ability of young people to participate meaningfully today. Let us sustain and enhance the momentum of youth engagement in climate action and climate governance processes.
Thank you very much. So this video is made by our young colleagues, Christian and Isaac. And it is really a teaser of the policy guide that they have prepared. That way you can find actual examples of how do we do education, how do we do political policy engagement of youth, and we hope that would be helpful for everyone. Okay, now let me welcome Hema Fatih Shweta, who will share her wisdom, her insights, and her call for action. Welcome him.
This is a large crowd on a Friday morning on the last day, But I'm very happy to be here. My name is Hemavati. I'm from India, and I'd like to call myself a youth climate justice advocate. And since they've doubled the time I can speak, I'll probably start off with my story or my climate journey itself. I am a lawyer by training. I finished my master's. I started working with an NGO where we represented communities who are impacted by governmental policies. And these are all environmental impacts. And back in India, we have something called the public interest litigation. So anybody can get to go to a court of law on behalf of the communities and ensure they get the justice they deserve. And in this particular case, it was like a rural area in the south of India, and the government had taken away a lot of grasslands that the communities relied on for development of major national projects, which kind of pushed people into poverty in terms of having access to those grasslands itself. So we were in the court fighting for, how can the government do better in terms of helping them supporting their livelihoods itself, which was impacted by the government's decision. We go to the field, we speak to the communities, understand their issues before we write our petition, so that, we basically not only speak about law, but also share stories so that the judges can understand what are the realities on the ground. So when I went to the ground, it's like a whole week of talking to various stakeholders in that particular area. Like my first meeting, I had a lady break down thinking about the future of her child because she couldn't earn enough money in that particular case. And other people who are like, migrating and leaving the family. They've been living in the same area for a while, but then because of the new situation impacting their livelihood itself, they've decided to move, and a lot of other things. So when you speak to them as people who are impacted by these policies, and that is the area in this context is also a drought-prone region. 0 rains for 8 years, obviously impacted by climate change at various levels. And as a young person, I was 23 years old then, and as a young person, I basically heard them out, and when I told them we're gonna help you with some court orders so that you're better positioned because of the court orders in their context, they trusted us. The communities basically said, please help us, and despite the fact that I was a 23-year-old, they believed that I was capable of helping the communities, especially when it comes to their life or livelihood. And that is such a great, big responsibility to have. And I was very motivated. And after the survey and conversations, I was well prepared. I went to the local governmental office, the next week. And when I did go there, all the empowerment I received from the people who were impacted just vanished because of how a government official treated me. It's like, I went, when you look young, people don't necessarily try to approach you the same way as somebody who's an adult, right? So especially when it comes to a government official, I was made to wait for 2 hours for no reason at all. When they did, when I did get a opportunity to speak, it was only questions about how well-read are you, or how, what are you doing in your life, and why are you even here, instead of getting a different job, and I felt so disempowered, simply because how they would, and I've seen this person talk to, my colleague who's 40 years old, and it was not the same language or the same way they spoke to me. And I realized people in positions of, especially when it comes to climate action, this is something I always reflect on, my experience, because we have so many communities across the world who actually believe in youth, that the fact that they can actually create change. The problem is the people in positions of power don't do so. So that is where there is a huge gap in how we engage and perceive youth engagement itself. It's the people who are in positions of power who need to believe that we are capable of coming up with solutions and actually doing things to make, the world a better place to live. And another thing I would like to reflect on and going beyond this is basically a lot of times people speak about capacity building. Always, the word capacity building around climate action, it is always aimed at young people. I believe capacity building has to go both ways, which means you also build the capacity building of policymakers, of all people in the positions of power. Unless they are trained to meaningfully engage with youth, it will always end up in tokenistic representation and tokenistic engagement. So it is equally important that we train. It's as simple as holding how many of you all have heard capacity building for policymakers on how to engage with youth? Very few. There are very, very rare instances on policymakers, being trained. This is the right way to engage, this is the wrong way to engage. So it is very important for all of us to understand that the capacity building should go both ways and not just youth being recipients of, how to take climate action. So when we know how to take climate action, it is important, equally important, for people engaging with us to meaningfully engage with us. And the second part I always go back to, and something that's close to my heart, is the idea around green jobs itself for young people, because when we speak about climate action, we want more and more young people taking up green jobs only. Now, this is an ideal scenario where, there are opportunities available for young people to engage, and the person has specific skill sets to be in that green job. But many a times when I see, I am also a professor, so I teach master students, and I was fortunate enough to teach about 60 students who are already interested in sustainability. This course was called MSc in Climate Science and Policy. They were all very focused, engaged, and everything else. When it came to their placements at the end of 2 years, once they finished their masters, all their goal was to make money. That was simply because of how, I'm only speaking this from a global south perspective, like a lot of developing countries, right? Our labor is many a times very, very cheap. So you don't necessarily get paid a lot of money, especially when it comes to jobs that are, environment related or climate related and everything. If it's a corporate job relating to climate, only then can you get and we call it the green job itself. So many a times we don't have the privilege to quit the job we have and take up a green job. And that brings in a lot of guilt for a lot of young people. They don't have a choice to make because it's a matter of their livelihood. And especially young people in the global south, even in Asia, we always feel that sense of responsibility of taking care of our parents once we get a job, right? We always set aside money for our family or for our siblings or, giving back to somebody in the family. There's always that association, and you always want to make money so that they are happy, not just about your own livelihood. So there are many cultural nuances about, how you engage with young people across various regions itself. And we cannot make those difficult choices, especially when it comes to our livelihood. So that's where I feel it is very, very important that we start reimagining climate action itself. Climate action does not mean it has to be a green job in a climate, in a company working on climate change or sustainability only. How do you ensure that I'm taking climate action within my job, say in KPMG? Or as a lawyer, how do I ensure that I'm taking climate action? For example, in India, if I work as an environmental lawyer, I will make absolutely no money. That is, it's simply because it's because of the culture. People don't go to court often, and most of the environmental law cases are pro bono. So nobody's going to pay you for all these cases, which means I'm not going to make any money. But that's where my passion lies. what happens is that I also need to do something else that not necessarily climate action related to make sure that I'm sustaining myself but also taking climate action. So it's very important that, you know, when we speak about climate action for young people, we always look at the barriers that, you know, stopping them from making that transition. A lot of people, you know, it's very inspiring. You must have all seen on LinkedIn, I've taken a 6-month sabbatical and I've decided to, you know, change my career from one area to, you know, something focused on sustainability because I know this is happening. First, a lot of people don't have that privilege to take that 6-month sabbatical, right? So we don't necessarily consider that transition process and the privilege you have in making that transition itself. So when we speak about empowering youth, especially in this particular case, I think we should always, always consider the barriers, cultural nuances, and obviously empowerment in the true sense, so that we are not just necessarily addressing climate change as an issue, but then we are addressing youth empowerment as a solution to not just climate change, but everything else as well. So I'll just stop here, but thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to share my story and thoughts.
Thank you so much, Hemafati. It is a really inspiring story she shared from when she was young, navigating through the political difficulties and all the stress that has been put on her. And she thrived and then become a professional in this, become a transitional bridge that bring the knowledge, the climate knowledge to the formal education systems. And now she's a lawyer by training. She's doing her PhD. And we really... yeah, it's very inspiring for me. I almost cried. And now, without further ado, let me pass the floor to Ding Long and Joshua, who will take you through some Mentimeter questions. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ian. And what a fantastic speech by Hemavati. So, yeah, you have seen, I see people scanning already. We'll just do a quick Mentimeter activity to crowdsource some of your ideas on meaningful youth engagement in climate governance. So yeah, you can scan the QR code or you can go to menti.com and put the code. If you are downstairs, upstairs, behind the scene, feel free to come to the Action Hub, feel free to scan. If you can hear me, come to the Action Hub, there is a QR code to scan. Okay, so yeah, we'll just start with a quick, easy question, just to sense a bit the room. Next slide, please. Just yes, no, have you been involved in being consulted or being involved in climate policy development? It's a question we've been asking every day this week, but I'll still ask it because there's a few new faces here. But let's see, okay, 7, 7, 8, okay. so let's see who's gonna win, yes or no. But yeah, so we have half of the room who has been involved, half of the room who hasn't been involved. It's a good reflection to have already. In the next question, which is not a question, but just briefly introducing one of our knowledge products based on this question and based on everything that you have shared. Yes, so 10, exactly, no. So how do we do that? How can we be involved in climate policy development? It's a question that I thought a lot about when the first time someone asked me, how can I be involved in climate policy from the youth, but also from the government perspective? How can we meaningfully engage with young people? And me, I was in the middle, and I have no idea. So that's why we started to document with YECAP examples across the region of government and youth partnership on how to meaningfully engage with young people. Joshua will share an example a bit later, but yeah, next slide, please. So introducing the compendium of best practices of YECAP. So we documented 15 concrete examples in the region of government and youth partnerships, really in a way, as Hemavati mentioned, to first from the government side, to provide examples, successful examples of what other governments have been doing in the region, so that maybe if I'm sitting in Cambodian government, I can see that, wow, Vietnam government has been doing this, it's amazing, I want to do the same. or it expands your imagination, inspiration, but also as a youth to give you ideas of how have youth been involved in other countries. So you can maybe advocate for it. You have more concrete ideas on what you can request and demand from your national, subnational, or local government. I have 2 more questions just to crowdsource, consolidate a bit all the knowledge in this room. But that next one is, what do you think are some barriers, next slide please, to youth engagement in climate governance? You have heard a bit from Hemavati. I'm sure you have heard throughout the week. If you have been to the youth affiliated events, it was a hot topic every day. But yeah, what are some of the barriers to meaningfully engaging youth in climate governance? Lack of credibility, so it's related to what Hemavati has shared in her story. Being seen as youth, maybe we don't have the trust. We don't have the trust from the elder generation, from the government. Maybe they don't think we can make it, we can do it. Yeah, also the same change of mindset of people in power. Financial problem, for example, if you want to attend COP or any of these events, it's always a big issue that comes back over and over. Capacity building and mentorship, no opportunity to be involved. Sometimes as a youth, we really want to be involved, we're trying so hard, but maybe there's no opportunity. Digital divide for maybe all the digital participation tools. Lack of confidence. Government don't have time to engage young people. Maybe Joshua, if you can scroll down a little bit, so we see the other examples. Language barrier. Lack of acknowledgement of climate within the government, how to get a seat. Okay, so there is a mix of youth, of not taking climate seriously either. So that's, yeah, some of the ideas. You can get more ideas as well in ESCAP policy brief that Ian just introduced earlier. Next question, please, Joshua. This time, if we flip the coin, okay, we spoke about the barriers. What are some of the accelerators? What do you think can be done, should be done to promote meaningful youth engagement? It's a more complicated question, right? So we spoke about the barriers. Maybe if you have been involved, how have you been involved? From everything you heard throughout the week, how do you think we can promote meaningful youth engagement from the youth perspective, but also from the government perspective? So targeting, mobilizing resources, financial and non-financial for youth initiative. In one of the youth affiliated events, we had representatives from the governments of Singapore and Malaysia, which shared a lot of very inspiring initiatives for young people. So that's, yeah, a lot of great examples I got this week. Capacity building for both youth and policymakers. Climate education embedded in the school curriculum. Official mechanism, official processes for young people in the political process. Okay, so yeah, that's a lot of great ideas. If you can scroll down, Joshua, just to see. So capacity building starts from school again, so from primary up until lifelong learning. Green jobs as well. Okay, so hope it makes you think. Again, you can check ESCAP policy brief or ECAP compendium for more ideas. And then I just want to invite Joshua to share a bit about his personal experience as well as a youth in being meaningfully engaged in climate governance. So yeah, over to you, Joshua.
Thanks, Din Long. Hi everyone, selamat pagi, salam sejahtera to everyone. So maybe to go sidetrack a little bit. So raise your hand if you know where is Brunei Darussalam. Oh my God, okay, of course we're in Malaysia, we're neighbors. So usually outside of this region, people are like, oh, where is that? So Brunei is one of the remaining country that is ruled by a monarch, and with that as well, we are a more centralized form of government. And in recent years, public forums is slightly more open. This happened partly during COVID as well. I think during COVID, NGOs work along with government and they see the role of youths in helping the government to fill in the gaps where the government couldn't perform as well or as efficient. So this was done amidst of all of that. So this was done during, I think, the second wave of our COVID period. So during the first wave, it kind of helped to build a narrative where youth are capable of doing something great. And it kind of like created a cascading effect. It, like what Hemavati said, sometimes youth are put in a pedestal of trying to prove if we are capable or not. And the initial work that was done by our predecessors, who works on the health and safety part of things, helped to garner that confidence within the government to support youth's initiative. So it cascades to having us, giving the mandate to do the ASEAN You Can dialogue. So that's a bit background on how these processes or how the processes within the country created into this whole movement. So yeah, I'm also a part of the an NGO, an ASEAN NGO called ASEAN Youth Advocate Network Brunei. And prior to this, we have to prove a lot, or like doing a lot of events, proving them that, you can trust us, we are doing this, we're capable, we've been doing all of this stuff. So that even that took around maybe 1.5 years, relatively long, considering the number of people as well. So yeah, from there, we were mandated, we were called by the Brunei Climate Change Secretariat, and they said like, oh, would you want to co-lead an event along with us? And my first reaction is, what? And then can you give a example on how to run a workshop? And me and my then former director was like, okay, we need to search how to do this stuff because we never really do a regional event or ASEAN level event. So we were like freaking out. And then we went to an official like government office, talking with the secretary of the Ministry of Development, along with the head of the Climate Change Secretariat, pretending that, like, that we know what we're talking about. And then at the end of the session, we just walk out and then like sit down. What just happened? So that's our first kind of like interaction with the government. And like what Hemavati said, the first step sometimes need to come from the government, and especially in a top-bottom country. So yeah, during this time, it was during the Brunei ASEAN Chairmanship. So we tried to gather all 10 ASEAN countries together. Some of them missed here because this was the 16th ministerial meeting. So we did the declaration on the ASEAN You Can, so the Bandar Seri Begawan Declaration. And yeah, we give different different focal points or issues within the region. And one of the things that stood out was the creation of a centralized finance monitoring center on climate change in ASEAN region. So we kind of like helped to lobby along with the Brunei Climate Change Secretariat to open a ASEAN Center for Climate Change. So at the end of the summit, to our surprise, our statement was inducted as one of the key deliverables of Brunei ASEAN Chairmanship statement. And after that, the ASEAN Center for Climate Change was agreed in principle. So that this is the first ASEAN Center for Climate Change in Southeast Asia. So we were like very excited because our voice was heard. I thought it was being ignored, but people were actually listening. And after a while, it kind of like died down. We were like, what happened? We didn't hear anything. We were worried. We keep on like pestering and asking the Brunei Climate Change Secretariat, how can we move forward? How can we help this? How can we galvanize this a little bit more? So we keep on talking and see if there's any progress. And always the dialogue between the youth and the government was there for us to talk. Sometimes, for instance, we get ignored, and we get ignored always. But we persist. And 3 years later, His Majesty opened the Legislative Council, and he basically said, we agreed to the Center of Climate Change being opened in Brunei, and this year is the first year, earlier this year, and it is on the spot, it is rolling. And yeah, I invite people to also support Brunei's initiative. We are a very timid country. We don't start initiative. We usually just follow. So I'm very proud. I'm very proud of my country in taking the first step in trying to start something. And Brunei is also a very heavy fossil fuel country, and this initiative kind of like show that they are taking the initiative to move away from their carbon-heavy industry. So yes, that is me, and that is one of the example in the compendium. And persist is the key. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joshua, and thank you, Ting Long. I agree that persistence is really the key, and through Hemaphathi's intervention and Joshua, we really hear how much difficulties youth face and how much courageous they have to persist throughout the systems. Also from the Mentimeter that Ting Long led, we heard many feedbacks, and then we have many good examples on the different steps we can all take from people in power or youth to really make the system change that is needed for more stronger climate actions and youth engagement. So let me now welcome the UNFCCC Regional Director. Yes, Julie Amoroso Gatting. Thank you for sharing some feedback and your wisdom with us.
Thank you, Regional Lead for RCC Asia Pacific. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. Yeah, I know we're running late, so I'm just going to maybe give a few points. I was listening, of course, to the keynote speaker earlier in terms of how difficult it is indeed to engage with the youth. But something that I noticed earlier in this slide is that how to meaningfully engage with the youth. So something tells me that we've already achieved engaging with the youth, right? So there's that step already. But now we are looking into more meaningful engagement. So I think this, I know that, you know, our process under the UNFCCC is quite a slow process. But someone told me, who's a veteran with the UNFCCC, someone told me before that sometimes there's patience in impatience. I know we wanted to always jump from one place to another and achieve result, but if you look back into the process, you can reflect that some vital, you know, things have actually moved forward as well. So now I'm happy that we are now looking into key things in which we can meaningfully engage with the youth. So one thing that I heard from the conversation earlier is inclusive participation and intersectoral participation. Or intersectoral collaboration. Youth should not only be speaking with another youth organization. Youth organizations should also be collaborating and engaging with the governments and key stakeholders in terms of accelerating climate action. And I think this is one key part in which the Regional Collaboration Center plays a role. For Asia Pacific, for instance, we're very active in collaborating with the YECAP colleagues in the YECAP platform. And as a way forward, one thing that we can continue to put in the table is to continue to connect the youth in the region to the different initiatives that are that are ongoing under the UNFCCC process. One is in terms of the fellowship program in the UNFCCC. And I think that's a perfect example where the youth are being given a space in terms of governance at the international level. You have been, the YECAP platform have been actively working with our colleagues in the UNFCCC. I see them in the back, and they are, for me, a very proactive engagement an example of very proactive engagement in the UNFCCC process. And I wanted maybe to just say that there are also other engagements happening not only under the UNFCCC but also with other governments as well. I cannot, of course, share that here because I know we're running out of time. But there are if you look deeper into the different examples coming from the different governments, you can also see the active engagement that the youth plays in terms of running for office, for instance. These are, I think, entry points that you can also look at in terms of how you can, integrate also youth engagement in terms of policy making. One example is that in the Philippines, we have a very young local chief executive who is running a very big, highly urbanized city in the Philippines, which is Vico Soto, and a very active sustainability and DRR champion as well. So I think I will stop here. I don't want to take so much of the time, but one thing that I would also I will also leave is we heard that we hear you in terms of asking for recognition and validation, because we know that youth are doing so much in terms of climate action. So we will always we will continue to engage with you, and we look forward to collaborating more in terms of meaningful climate action in the region. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie. That is really inspiring, and really, we really want to bring that to the next level, to do meaningful youth engagement, and I believe we are all doing that, playing our role. Thank you very much. So now we are close to the end of the session. During the session, we have introduced the ESCAP policy briefs on meaningful youth engagement. We have introduced the YECAP compendium. So you could find that all on this website with this link. Also in the link, we have a form that we invite you all to fill out, to put your best practices in that form and share that with us, so we could really learn more from you and really give you the platform and make you shine, because we really want to work together with you and make things easier for youth climate engagement, for a better future that youth will take lead. Thank you.